Fathers always know best. That's what they'll tell you. Raina never knew her father, but until recently, she would have said she wished she had. After all, she'd heard that a father's strength was a fortress, something you could rely on, something unshakable. That a father's love was constant, his wisdom infallible, his guidance the map that shaped who you'd become. But that's a lie. She knows this now. Not all fathers are protectors. Some are the very reason you need protection. What if the person shaping who you are isn't building you up, but slowly tearing you down? What if a father's strength isn't found in wisdom, but in his power to control you? Fathers always know best, until they don't. And sometimes love is nothing more than a trap, one that keeps you tethered, unable to break free. Raina pushes open the door to her apartment, the hinges creaking loudly in the oppressive quiet. The lights are off when she comes home. Raina should have known something was wrong because, while it's not uncommon for the power to run out in this shabby part of town, her mother and sister always rely on their magic to illuminate their home during a shortage. Not tonight, though. Tonight, the darkness is complete and oppressive. Assuming nobody's there, Raina steps inside. No place like home, she mutters to herself, wrinkling her nose at the stale air. Her footsteps echo up the worn-out stairs of her equally worn-out building. Neighbors yell, babies cry, and muffled arguments bleed through the cracks in the walls. We should have left long ago, Raina thinks bitterly as she climbs. But where to, and with what means? Magic is outlawed here, and those like her, witches, are hated, feared, hunted by those who rule this city, this entire state, with an iron grip. Raina scowls. How are they the bad guys here? How can the shifters, violent half-men, half-beasts who live in packs like dogs, think Raina and her people are the dangerous ones? The truth is, the witches are trapped. Shifters have banned magic usage for miles, but Raina's powers are bound to these lands. If staying means hiding her powers, moving implies losing them entirely. She unlocks the door and steps into the shadowy hallway of the apartment. Then she pauses. It's too quiet, eerily so. "Mom? Savvy?" she calls out, her voice swallowed by the stifling silence. There's nobody home. Of course not, hence the darkness. But why does the silence feel so heavy? Raina's fingers twitch instinctively, calling forth the small flicker of magic she uses to light her path. Except she can't. The air itself seems to push back, warning her to stop. Something's wrong. She's not alone after all. There's someone inside, someone near. Could her mother be asleep in her room? The hallway feels longer than it should, shadows pressing in on her. "Mom?" she whispers again, pushing open the door to her mother's room. Then Raina screams. Bound to the old wooden chair in the corner of the room is the shape of her mother, gagged with strips of cloth. "Mom!" she exclaims, rushing forward, but a hand clamps down on her shoulder, yanking her backward as a mouth presses against her ear, wet and unwelcome. "If you so much as twitch, your mother dies," it tells her. Raina's breath catches in her throat. The voice is sinister, growling. She feels the strength in the man's grip, the raw, violent power radiating off him. Perhaps if she'd found the ability to think fast, if she'd come up with the right spell to escape their fate, things would have been different. But Raina is stunned with panic. All she can do is suffer the desperate, suffocating beat of her heart. She's dragged into the living room, stumbles and tumbles to the floor. Then she meets her attacker. A man towers over her, his muscular frame casting a shadow that seems to swallow the entire room. His golden eyes glow faintly in the dark, cutting through the dim light like a predator's gaze. He's in his mid-50s, but his body is all hard muscle and savage energy. Raina's stomach drops. This man is a shifter. Panic surges in her chest. "Please," she starts, her voice shaking. "We've only ever used our magic for simple things, lighting, medicine, nothing more." "Quiet," the shifter snaps. His eyes burn into hers, but she can't look away. She's trembling, terror coursing through her veins like ice. He's dangerous, violence barely restrained beneath his skin. Is he going to turn, devour her? She's heard of witches being skinned alive by men like these, men who are not men, but wolves, savages. Before she can say anything else, her mother is brought into the room by another man-like beast. Her bonds cut into her wrists as they yank her forward. But she's not alone. Savvy, Raina's sister, is pushed into the room behind their mother, her eyes wide with fear, tears streaming down her face as she struggles uselessly against her captor. Her sobs are stifled by a gag. "No, no," Raina gasps, her voice breaking. She tries to move forward, but the tall man blocks her path, his presence towering over her. The oppressive weight of danger thickens the air, and Raina's mind races. She's trapped. They all are. The brutish shifter holding her mother grips her tightly enough to break her bones should he wish. The room feels like it's spinning, every second stretching into eternity. Raina's heartbeat thunders. What can she do, and how does she get her family out of this? "Listen carefully," the man in front of her growls, his golden eyes narrowing. "You're going to do exactly as I say. If you don't, your mother and sister won't live to see another day. Am I clear?" Raina's entire world narrows to those words. The room swirls, the terror and the certainty of it crashing down on her like a tidal wave. She nods, her body trembling. "Good," the shifter says. "Now let's talk about how you're going to help me." Later, Raina sits by the piano. She's been instructed to start playing at 9 p.m. sharp. Well, technically, she can start before that, but the song she has to play, the one she's been practicing for, must begin at 9. She breathes through her nose and dries her palms on the long gown she's been told to wear. Never in her life has she worn something so glamorous. She couldn't have imagined the softness of the material if she tried, nor the grandiose luxury of the home that has become her prison. A shifter's home. Duncan's, to be exact. The man who took her exactly 7 days ago. Her life had turned into a living nightmare only a week prior, and yet it already feels like a lifetime. Duncan is the beta of the pack of shifters ruling the area. He's not a man one can afford to cross, especially when one is a witch. "I'm sorry, Raina," he'd rasped as she was thrown into the back of his car. "I don't think I understand," she'd stammered. The man growled, a warning rather than a mere sign of impatience. "I need you to seduce my brother, our alpha." The shifter repeated himself in a dangerous tone that didn't quite fit with the sheer absurdity of his statement. Seduce his brother? If it wasn't for the menacing golden gleam in this shifter's eyes and the fact that her mother and sister were being held hostage back at the flat, she might have thought she was in a bad romantic comedy. "I'm sorry, but I don't know any spells for that," Raina replied. "That would require using dark magic, and we—" Then make him fall in love with you the traditional way, the shifter interrupted, impatience marking his features. The traditional way? Raina's face fell. I've never even had a serious boyfriend, and you want me to throw myself at some guy? You won't have to become his lover, the shifter interrupted again, raising his hand dismissively. Just get him to grow attached to you, become his confidant of sorts. Why? Raina asked, confused. To get him to tell you things, of course, Duncan purred, like a content beast about to devour its dying prey. Things you'll report to me discreetly. That doesn't answer my question, Raina said, feeling quite dumb. What things? Precisely, Duncan confirmed. Though, in time, I'm hoping you can do more than just report his comings and goings back to me. I aim for you to exert some influence on my brother. Influence? How am I supposed to influence anybody when I can't even get Savvy to help with the dishes most days? Especially seeing how shifters hate witches with the passion of 1,000 suns. It's unlikely your alpha brother would take interest in a witch. Duncan smirked. It was more a display of teeth than an actual smirk. A fair point, but not to worry. We'll make sure he never learns you're a witch. I have it on good authority that you can make potions to mask your scent, appear human, or perhaps make one think you were a shifter yourself. Raina kept quiet. How could this outsider know so much about what witches could or couldn't do? It was unheard of. Most importantly, Duncan added, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, you will do as I say, or your family pays the price. Magical oaths are a serious matter, ensuring that someone keeps their end of a bargain no matter the circumstances. Raina had gasped in shock. How did he know about them? Magical oaths were forbidden among witches due to their dangerous and life-threatening nature. A witch under oath was bound to adhere to whatever agreement they'd sworn, forcing them to keep their promise or suffer grave consequences, usually death. Oaths are abominations, she snapped, anger overshadowing her fear. You don't understand what you're asking me to do. But the shifter laughed, a cold, indifferent sound. It seemed he understood perfectly and simply didn't care. Why do you think I came all this way if not for insurance, he said. Swear on your magic that you won't tell anyone about our agreement, or I'll kill both your mother and sister right now. In the end, there hadn't been much of a choice. Raina swore an oath, one her magic would bind her to for the rest of her life. She could never reveal the pact she'd been forced into with Duncan, seducing his brother in exchange for her mother and sister's lives. 7 days passed, and she was about to meet the reason she'd been taken in the first place. The clock struck 9, and Raina began to play her part. 3 punches landed squarely on Aiden's jaw, a dull thud that barely registered. He was held against the wall of a dingy bar by another shifter, who likely had a name, though Aiden was too drunk to remember it. The man had red hair and a flushed face, fury blazing in his eyes. It was almost amusing how worked up he was. Even when his knuckles cracked across Aiden's face again, Aiden remained unfazed. You're no better than any of us, Redface snarled, spittle flying as he slammed Aiden harder against the wall. Not anymore, Aiden shrugged, rolling his head lazily to look at the man. Look, she wasn't interested, he muttered, his lips quirking into a smirk. Hell, you are boring her, man. Read the room. Redface let out a growl of rage, his fist crashing into Aiden's ribs, a sickening crack that barely made him grunt. You're a disgrace to your pack, the shifter spat, breath hot and rancid. You'll never become alpha, and everyone knows it. Aiden rolled his eyes at the insult. Did this guy really think he hadn't heard it all before? He let himself be hit again, feeling the man's fist slam into his ribs with more force. There was the crunch of bone, probably his own. No wonder your father's ashamed of you, Redface sneered, throwing another punch aimed at his face. This time, Aiden caught the man's wrist mid-swing, his fingers tightening like a vice. I'm bored, Aiden muttered, his voice low. With a single twist, he sent the man crashing into the wall. Redface whined as he hit the floor, the impact knocking him unconscious. Aiden straightened, brushing off the dust from his jacket. His body remained relaxed despite the fight. Glancing down at the man's unconscious form, his lip curled in mild amusement before turning toward Redface's two companions. Friends who've been standing behind him the entire time are now staring at him with wide, fearful eyes. Aiden wipes some blood off his split lip and arches an eyebrow. Anyone else want to go? He asks, amused. He steps forward, but they're already backing away, cowards. They bolt, disappearing into the shadows of the bar. Aiden snorts, shaking his head. Didn't think so, he mutters to himself, running a hand through his hair. The crowd around him, mostly packmates now, barely reacts. They've all seen it before, the deep-rooted anger that bubbles beneath the surface, constantly looking for an outlet. Everyone knows why it's there. Everyone knows Redface wasn't entirely wrong. His father is ashamed of him. It's no secret. With a sigh, Aiden rolls his shoulders, testing the pain in his ribs. He's healing already, the perks of being a shifter. The bruises will be gone by morning. Broken ribs, right as rain. The numbness, though, that sticks around. Turning away from the body on the floor, Aiden strolls back to the bar. Who's up for another drink? He shouts to his friends, his voice cutting through the noise. His buddies erupt in cheers, lifting their glasses and clinking them in his direction. Once, Aiden might have worried he was having a bad influence on his pack. Now, though, well, it's not exactly his problem anymore, is it? For Raina, the melody is soft and haunting, evoking a melancholy that sinks deep into the room. Raina's fingers glide over the keys, light as feathers. Her magic has helped her learn the piece in record time, for before this week, she hadn't sat at a piano in years. It's not all she'd had to learn, though. As the notes rise and fall, slow and deliberate, memories of this past week echo in her mind. Her arrival in Duncan's home, a grandiose space lost amidst the woods, amongst which shifters roam, all more terrifying than the next. She'd mostly kept to her room, though unfortunately her captor hadn't let her. "You'll need to pass as one of us," he told her, in between lectures on pack hierarchies that made no sense to a human. A human wouldn't appeal to an alpha, and as we discussed, a witch even less so. "My scent might seem like a shifter's, thanks to this," she'd replied, pointing to the small vial of potion she carried around her neck. "But I don't know a spell that would allow me to shift." "Perhaps if we hadn't been forbidden to practice magic for decades," Duncan had shot back, silencing her with a quick hand movement that made her flinch. "We'll say you're a wolfess," he'd replied. "A shifter who cannot shift, slightly disgraceful, but it'll have to do." "I didn't know those existed," Raina had commented. "They tend to live amongst humans rather than within a pack, which we will say you've been doing. It'll explain your shortcomings regarding our way of life." Duncan had bent his head toward her, his entire posture even more threatening. "Wolves have instincts, ones you'll have to feign. We're territorial and possessive, but we also respond to dominance." "Dominance?" Raina had asked, confused. Duncan sighed tiredly. "Whenever you're In the presence of a more dominant wolf, which in your case will almost always be true, your posture must project submission. The more dominant the other wolves are, the more submissive you'll act. Especially with your brother, Raina concluded. Who needs to become fond of me? Duncan's features twisted into a frown. Heath is the most dominant wolf in the pack, the leader. People look up to him, and you'll come to notice they adapt their behavior to better please him. So everyone bows down to his every wish. Raina resumed with a frown. She wasn't sure how she, who wasn't even a real shifter, was meant to attract the attention of someone used to being worshipped. But Duncan had this covered. I've planned your introductory meeting step by step. You'll need to learn how to play this, he added, handing Raina a piano sheet. Surely one of your spells can help. Again, Raina wasn't sure how he knew so much about what she could or couldn't do, but there was no time to dwell on it. She had, amongst many other things, an instrument to learn. And now, days later, the music has become her only companion, the only thing that knows the depths of her soul, and, apparently, the way to entrap Duncan's brother in her nets. She's getting to the part during which she knows her audience will step in. She tries to forget about it, to get lost in the music. The chords blend, creating a tapestry of sound that hums with nostalgia. Above her, onto the mezzanine accessible from the upper floor, she is being watched. A presence settles upon her shoulders like an impossible weight. She plays on, aware of it traveling up and down her back, settling on the exposed nape of her neck. Duncan said she'd look delicate. He'd said the alpha would like it. As the last note fades, it leaves behind a hollow stillness in its wake. For a moment, it feels as if the entire room holds its breath with her. Then, above her, someone begins to clap. Aiden isn't exactly sure how long he'd been sitting at this poker table, only that it's been too long. Seeing the various states of undress of everyone around him, Aiden likes to win, and he doesn't mind playing the long game. Ray, he announces after pretending to think about it for a moment. He's got 4 of a kind, so in reality, there's nothing to think about. But he's drunk enough that it takes him a little longer than usual to calculate his odds, though he's not drunk enough to forget that this entire meaningless night is boring him. So he waves someone over to fetch him a drink. His phone rings before he can get his new whiskey. Yeah, he sighs into the phone. Jackson, one of his father's guards, says something he can't hear over the music. Good, Aiden mutters. He would have never picked up if speaking to the guard didn't imply his father would hear what his son was currently up to. Instead of working, he didn't tend to do things which wouldn't end up pissing the alpha off. Driving the old man nuts was his new creed. It would have been sad, Aiden being way past the age for teenage rebellion, if it wasn't so satisfying. It's satisfying to see the old man finally at a loss on how to deal with him. He can't hear you, Jax, he teases into the phone, but tell Dad I say hey. Wait, no, tell him to join me. He'd love this. His father absolutely would not love this. If the alpha had ever partied in his youth, those days were long behind him. So far behind, he's probably forgotten what fun even feels like. These days, fun only annoys him, though most things do. Jackson begins to sound agitated now. Aiden deduces his father must be letting his anger out on him. He'd feel guilty, except he's been the outlet for his father's anger since birth. So, in his humble opinion, the bodyguard can take one for the team. But then he catches a word amidst the refrain of the current pop song being played. Wait, what was that? He asks carefully. I said, Jackson exclaims, that your father's met someone. Aiden pinches the bridge of his nose. And why would I care? He's a grown-ass man. On the other end of the line, Jackson clears his throat awkwardly. "Well," he begins, before taking a pause. Aiden rolls his eyes as he's finally handed his new drink. He downs it hurriedly, because he's going to need it if he's going to pursue this conversation. "Spit it out, Jax," he grunts. "Your uncle thinks he's going to marry her," the guard says. "The old man married?" Aiden snorts. "Is this a joke?" There's an awkward pause on the other line. "You need to come home, sir," Jackson says eventually. "You need to come home right now." Aiden rolls his eyes, wondering what home even is. The dim, nearly empty casino he currently sits in is just as much a home to him as the house he grew up in with his father, and he's only been here once. Why would I do that? He certainly doesn't need my blessing if he wants to go ahead and get hitched. "Sir," Jackson interrupts, "if your father takes a new mate, then that means he could have a new heir." Aiden cuts him off, ignoring the slight unease erupting at the thought. "I think I made it pretty clear I don't care about becoming alpha anymore, haven't I?" Jackson becomes silent again. "You don't mean that, sir," he says eventually. "You can't mean that. We need you. Everyone looks up to—" Aiden hangs up the phone and then orders himself another drink. The alpha is terrifying, though it's hard to pinpoint why. Perhaps it's the angry scowl constantly on his face, or the rage that's barely hidden under the surface. Raina hasn't known him long, only a month, but he seeks out her company often for some reason. Maybe because she barely speaks up around him. He doesn't look like a man seeking any opinions. He's obviously one who believes he knows best, always. His name is Heath Kane, and he comes by at random times, often late at night, asking her to play the piano. He is a man in his early 60s, tall and with slightly graying hair, who might have been handsome if not for the hardness in his eyes, which feels as if it's dissecting your soul and doesn't like what it finds. He isn't easily pleased, that much is obvious. He drums his fingers against the nearest surface when growing impatient. The alpha gives Raina the impression of a beast trapped in a cage, his mind filled with concerns she cannot comprehend. But when Raina plays, he relaxes. The lines of his face smooth, the hardness briefly disappears, and the beast evaporates, leaving behind an aging man. It makes her feel like a wildlife tamer. He forgets she's there until he doesn't. She much prefers his indifference to his attention. His attention feels heavy, weighted, a burden. Tonight, he stood behind her while she played the same song over and over. Raina was sick of it, but Heath could listen to it all day. "You play it just like she did," he'd whispered. Raina could feel his breath against her nape, and worse, his eyes, those beastly eyes judging her. His large, calloused hand touched her shoulder, and her entire body grew rigid. She found herself unable to move. She didn't want him to touch her, didn't want to pretend she liked it, but she had to. Slowly, she turned to meet the alpha's gaze. He was looking through her again, searching for what he wanted to see. "Again," he commanded, waving his hand distractedly. "Play it again." Raina held her breath, crisis averted, but for how long? She started playing a few keys and was quickly interrupted. "From the top," Heath asked. He didn't scream when angry. Instead, his tone grew infinitely calm, chilling in its composure. She dreamed of this voice now and woke up terrified. She wished she'd never have to see the alpha again. Later, she reported to Duncan. It had all gone as usual. The alpha listened in silence, as always, and then left. The following day, she was told she'd be moving into the pack house, the alpha's home. He'd requested her presence, and her piano would have to be brought in as well. "That piano's mine," Duncan muttered, resentment crossing his features before he caught himself. "You've done well," he added. "Don't forget your cover story. You've been rescued from a pack of rogue wolves. You're vulnerable and scared. You need protection. Raina did feel vulnerable and scared, and she had been attacked by wolves, though she supposed the alpha couldn't know his own brother had led the attack. "When can I see my family?" she asked quietly. It had been weeks. Her throat was grabbed, not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough to let her know it very well could. "You're in no place to be making demands," Duncan reminded her. He spat out his words when he got angry. Right now, the alpha came to her to soothe his nerves. Listening to her play the song his belated mate used to love made him feel better. "It's a start, but it's not enough. You need to make him confide in you." Raina winced, feeling a little more pressure on her windpipe. "How am I supposed to find out what you want to know if you won't tell me what it is?" The look Duncan gave her in response stunned her. "Silence. There's nothing I don't know." The man's voice snaps with disdain. "This is about influence, planting certain ideas into his head. That's how you help me. Just by making that cute little pout of yours. Yes," he adds, his finger grazing Raina's lips. Raina fights the overwhelming urge to bite Duncan's finger off. "What ideas should I be planting?" she asks, her voice trembling with nerves. Duncan releases her throat, watching her sink to the ground with a mocking smile. "Me and no one else." Aiden jumps out of his car, shoes crunching against the gravel as he strides up the steps to the pack house. The grand entrance opens into familiar territory. A butler, Lars, bows slightly to greet him. "Welcome home, sir," he says, his voice as crisp as ever. "Your father's in the dining room." Aiden nods but doesn't move forward just yet. He knows how to make an entrance. Besides, before stepping into the lion's den, so to speak, he needs clarity. "Who's here?" he asks Lars, cocking an eyebrow. A brief, unimpressed grimace flickers across the older man's face. "Who do you mean, sir?" Aiden snorts, so not even worth acknowledging. Another inconsequential mistress. Another fleeting fancy in Heath Kane's long line of women who could never replace Aiden's mother. Marriage? Yeah, right. He follows Lars down the hall, the towering walls of the house cold and aloof in their polished familiarity. As they near the dining room, the butler leans in slightly, his voice dropping. "Sir, you should know your father has taken an unusual liking to the girl." This makes Aiden blink. "Girl?" His mind flashes to the last few mistresses his father paraded around. None had ever been referred to as girls. They frowns. The butler steps into the dining room to announce his arrival, but Aiden brushes past him with a dismissive wave. "I can announce myself, thank you." Barely registering Duncan or his father, Aiden's eyes are immediately drawn to the guest sitting at the table. The girl, for she is a girl, and a particularly young one at that, appears early 20s at most, with an unassuming air that starkly contrasts everything his father represents. Long black hair frames her wintry skin. She's dressed as though headed to mass, sitting with the awkward presence of a shy adolescent. Her heart-shaped mouth is undeniably pretty. Aiden begrudgingly admits that much. But her blue eyes are too wide, too clear, brimming with curiosity and wonderment. Why is she holding his gaze like that? Surely this can't be his father's new girlfriend. He scoffs inwardly. What could Heath possibly see in someone so plain? Honestly, for all her rose-colored full lips, she's nothing special. Why her? What has she done to deserve his father's attention? The girl continues to stare at him. Doesn't she know she should lower her gaze? It feels almost like she's challenging him. Aiden suppresses the urge to twitch, but then the faintest blush grazes her cheeks. He smirks as those pink lips part ever so slightly. Aiden is no idiot. He knows what that slight change means. Interesting, he thinks, filing that bit of information away. She finds him attractive. His lips twitch upward in the faintest of smirks. Moments earlier, Raina adjusts her cream-colored dress as she steps into the lavish dining room of the pack house. The warm morning light casts a soft glow across the gleaming breakfast table, which would have been pleasant if not for the fact that Raina would rather be anywhere else. Heath's mansion, more luxurious than anything she's ever known, might have felt somewhat homely if not for its atmosphere, something she can't quite pinpoint but that constantly makes her feel inadequate. It's not just the looks she receives from the shifters coming and going around the place, maids, butlers, guards, and cooks. The house itself feels like it's always watching. She's been here for 2 weeks. Better here than with Duncan, though. Unlike him, the alpha leaves her alone. He is mostly absent, off doing things Raina isn't privy to. Meetings, pack business, or perhaps something else entirely. She doesn't ask. It is clear she's expected to play a certain role, one of quiet femininity, of endless bounds of subdued patience. She's the alpha's broken little bird, one who exists only when he wishes to hear the piano, an object. As long as she doesn't become one of desire, Raina counts herself lucky. But when will this all end? When will Duncan be satisfied with her endeavors? Whatever he thinks or says, Raina is there to listen and silently agree, ever quiet and reserved. But he doesn't say much most times. Raina feels he doesn't even see her. He's lonely, she thinks. Though, can one really feel sorry for a man who cannot stand anybody but a silent, broken stranger? Raina, a voice comments, scattering her thoughts, I see life at the pack house has been doing you good. Raina forces a brief smile as she meets Duncan's eyes across the breakfast table. Why is he here? To watch her? Remind her of who she works for? She turns to Heath, who rises to greet her. Good morning, my little songbird, the alpha says, pulling out a chair for her. Raina casts her eyes down in a show of modesty, her gaze landing on the table. It's been set for 4, she notes distractedly. Duncan's watchful gaze prickles at her skin. Does he expect her to drive the conversation somewhere? Luckily, he and another begin talking in low tones, their words blending into background noise when she drowns it all out. Raina likes to pretend that she is at home, that Mom is making tea, that Savvy's doing her nails, complaining about yet another heartbreak. If only she could hear from them. The door to the breakfast hall opens to one of the butlers, who clears his throat nervously before speaking. Alpha, he says, bowing slightly. Aiden has arrived. Aiden. Raina tries to remember if she's heard the name before. Possibly. She recalls whispered questions and vague rumors, something about a scandal or two. A man's voice interrupts, cutting through the room like a blade. I can announce myself, thank you, it says. The man steps into the room, no more than a few years older than Raina. His clothes are elegant but wrinkled, his hair disheveled as if he's just woken up. Yet his movements are sharp and lively, carrying an air of carefree, untamed energy. His gaze, bright, gleaming green, locks onto her with an intense, calculated focus that pins Raina to her chair. She knows she should lower her eyes, pack hierarchy demands it, but she can't, not when he's still staring at her like that, demanding her full attention. He's the most beautiful man she's ever seen, and the realization leaves her feeling exposed. Before she can process anything further, his finger points directly at her. Is this her? He asks, his tone almost offended. Heath rises from his seat. Are you too good to be on time now, boy? He snaps. Sit down, the man retorts. Oh, cut the crap, Dad. Raina's jaw nearly drops. No one speaks to the alpha like that, as though he's just another person. She glances at Duncan briefly, who silently motions for her to stay quiet. Meanwhile, Aiden, Heath's son, begins ranting about an upcoming marriage. Raina isn't sure who or what he's referring to until Heath growls back, "I never said I was planning to marry her." Raina's heart skips a beat. Her mouth opens, but no words come out. Is he talking about her? No one had mentioned anything about a wedding. No hints, no warnings. Before she can ask, it becomes painfully clear she's not meant to participate in this discussion. "She's important to me," Heath says, meeting her gaze briefly. It takes no effort for Raina to drop her eyes this time. How could she possibly matter to him? He barely knows her. She rarely speaks around him, if at all. "I'm planning to adopt her," Heath announces, and a deafening silence falls over the room. Adopt her? Raina thinks, stunned. Why would he do such a thing? What will Duncan think? She doesn't dare look at him. He sent her here to seduce the alpha, not become his ward. Adopt her? Aiden scoffs. Why the hell would you adopt her? "So I can finally experience what having decent progeny feels like," Heath replies with a sardonic smirk. Duncan looks pleased, while Raina fights the urge to let her shoulders sag. Meeting Aiden's affronted gaze again, she braces herself. Later that night, Raina sits in the music room with Heath. The fire crackles softly in the chimney, filling the silence between them. It's late, nearing midnight. Her piano recital has ended, leaving only the two of them behind. "I apologize for my son," Heath says, breaking the quiet. Raina hesitates, unsure of how to respond. "They thought we were getting married," she blurts out before realizing how wrong that sounds. Why bring up the marriage at all? She certainly doesn't want to give Heath the wrong impression. "Duncan told them so," Heath explains. "He hoped it would get me to come home." The alpha explains, giving her a long, assessing glance. Raina wonders what this means, where Aiden has been, and why Heath never talks about him. After all, Aiden is his son, and from what she's gathered, his only one. She phrases none of this out loud. Instead, Raina nods, hoping to hide her nerves, apparently not very well. "I would never make advances towards you, child," Heath says with a frown. Her gaze snaps back to meet the alpha's briefly. He seems sincere. This is good, right? She hopes it's good. She hopes for a lot of things. That her mother isn't withering away in worry. That her sister isn't getting into trouble. "You're safe here in my home as part of my pack, and you always will be. But you're not a prisoner. You can go wherever you like and leave whenever you see fit." Raina holds back a snort. If only it were up to her, she'd never have come here in the first place, amongst these people who'd hate her if they knew what she really was, and who don't even particularly like her as she is now. But she can't exactly explain why her family is being held hostage. Her magic won't let her. "Thank you," she murmurs, forcing the words out of her mouth. Heath thinks she's been attacked and that she now has amnesia. He thinks she needs help, and he's being kind to her. She supposes, perhaps if it weren't for the magical oath, she could have asked for his help. "Your son doesn't seem to like me very much," she observes, because hope is too painful a thing to hold on to. She thinks about the way Aiden had looked at her at breakfast, for all of the 10 minutes he deigned to stay amongst them, only long enough for an espresso. Like Raina some puzzle he's eager to solve and yet doesn't enjoy. He clearly wanted her gone. His contempt for her was obvious. Unsurprising, everyone she'd met here looked at her with contempt. But instead of the expected relief she tends to feel at being overlooked, Aiden's dislike had only made her want to prove him wrong. Surely, if she were to remain in Heath's good graces, she couldn't afford to displease his family. "He's ungrateful and spoiled, which is my fault, I suppose," the alpha says, interrupting her thoughts. "I've been too lenient with the boy, starting with letting him grow up in this house for so long." Do you know I only sent him away to train when he was 6? Raina blanks. Oh, wow, she replies, because she has no words. Is 6 supposed to be old to be sent away? Meanwhile, the alpha sighs, frustration marking his features. No, it's more than frustration, anger and contempt. She knows what contempt looks like now, except for once it isn't directed at her. He does as he pleases, when he pleases, and he doesn't care about anything other than himself. And I'm supposed to give over the pact to him? He isn't ready. He will never be ready. Raina frowns. She hadn't realized until now, hadn't stopped to consider this, but Aiden is the alpha son. This makes him his heir, does it not? Are you worried he will not want to become alpha when the time comes? She asks, snapping her attention fully back to him. Raina keeps her mouth shut as Heath's piercing gaze lands back on her. It's not about what he wants, the man barks. It's about what the pack needs, and it certainly doesn't need Aiden's nonsense. Raina stays quiet. From what she's gathered, whoever inherits Heath's title must be chosen by him. He gets to decide, and unless the entire pack rebels, which is unlikely, his chosen successor becomes the next alpha. But Aiden is Heath's only child. If not him, then who? He hasn't even found a mate yet. Heath growls, seemingly lost in thought once more. To be fair, Duncan hasn't either. But Raina stills at the thought of Duncan. Why would the alpha compare his son to Duncan? And then it hits her. Duncan is the alpha's younger brother. With Aiden out of the picture, this makes him Heath's most likely successor. Aiden grits his teeth. The girl plays piano for him. His father, the great Heath Kane, alpha of the pack, spending most of his time in the company of some barely legal random woofus girl, all because she can somewhat play the piano. Aiden paces his room, his agitation growing with every step. It just doesn't make any sense. She barely says a word, just sits there gaping like a fish. But somehow, because she can manage to pluck out some Chopin, she's suddenly the most fascinating thing that ever lived. He snorts, shaking his head. If his father was so obsessed with music, he could have had Aiden take piano lessons. He would have, once upon a time. Hell, he would have done anything to please the man. God knows he tried, but even when Aiden still played the perfect son, practically running the pack in his father's stead, it hadn't been enough. Well, no more. He's done. Done with his father's impossible standards, done with this suffocating house, and done with the entire charade. Aiden grabs his jacket and sets off to find some party, some faraway city, anything to drown out the noise in his head. But for some reason, he finds himself wandering into another part of the house. His feet stop in front of a door, and before he can think twice, he's inside. Only then does it occur to him, this is her room. Raina. What kind of name is that anyway, he thinks, knowing fully well he's picking at straws now. The room is dark and pristine, without a trace of being lived in, apart from faint traces of her lingering scent. Most wolves carry their emotions in their scent, fear, anger, desire, but hers is subdued. He wonders if it's because she doesn't have a wolf. His father's obsessed with a shifter who can't even shift, but somehow it's Aiden who's lacking. Perhaps he really is as disappointing as he's been told. Before he can dig into that thought, the door swings open. Aiden is startled for a second, though he recovers quickly. "You don't even play that well," he taunts, his voice low and mocking. Raina freezes in the doorway, her wide eyes locking onto his. She stands there, her fingers clutching the edge of the door, ready to flee. This won't do. He takes a step closer, almost without thinking. Raina's face flushes, and he wants to see how far that blush can deepen for him. If her breath catches, much like it did at breakfast, though this time purely out of curiosity. Apparently, playing music is all you do, so I can't help but wonder why my father is so captivated by you. Raina's eyes flicker, and for the briefest moment, something flashes across her face. Are you accusing me of witchcraft? She asks. Aiden rolls his eyes. Relax. I'm not about to accuse you of being a criminal. Raina flinches, but even as unsettled as she seems, she continues to look at him. He takes another step closer, watching her reaction intently. Her pulse races. He can hear it, feel it in the air between them. Beneath the subdued layers of her scent lies a wildness that doesn't quite align with the fragile image she projects. What are you doing here, Aiden? The girl whispers as he comes to stand directly in front of her. I could ask you the same thing, he replies, his voice taking on a darker edge. What are you doing here, playing house in the Alpha's home of all places? Her eyes widen at his words, but she doesn't look away. If anything, she squares her shoulders slightly, straightening her back before smiling faintly. Bending her head toward him, she whispers, "Jealous?" The defiance catches him off guard. His wolf purrs within him. So she has claws after all. I did think the cottage girl routine was a tad overdone, he muses aloud. Maybe I've just taken a liking to your father, Raina counters coolly. Aiden reaches out slowly, his fingers brushing her chin. She doesn't flinch or pull back. Nobody likes my father, he says, his voice barely above a whisper now. Not even me, and he's my father. Her breath hitches at his touch, and Aiden feels a surge of satisfaction until her next words slip past her lips. Is that why you're acting out like a petulant child? She taunts softly. His smirk deepens as he notices her gaze flicker to his lips for the briefest second. It's not an act. I just woke up one day and figured, why the hell not? Raina raises an eyebrow. Because you think you can get away with everything you want? Is that it? Her scent washes over him, clouding his thoughts further. It doesn't help that she's still staring at him, those wide blue eyes searching his face. I know I can, he murmurs, and then, without thinking better of it, he raises his wrist to her neck, giving her a challenging look. He assumes this will make her back down. No shifter woman would tolerate such a blatant scent marking after knowing him for only 10 minutes. But to his surprise, Raina simply blinks at him. What are you doing? She asks, though she doesn't move away. Aiden snorts. Really? Back to playing the wide-eyed innocent again? He winks, pressing his skin against her pulse point, rubbing deliberately. Raina lets him. She lets him and stares, her blue eyes wide and unafraid, almost as if she has no idea what she's allowing him to get away with. He probably should stop, but the thought of his father catching his scent on her, the Alpha's little pet, is too tempting. His father will be furious, perhaps enough to finally disown him for good. What a thrilling thought. Relief washes over her. Yes, this is exactly why he insists on rubbing his scent all over Raina. Not because he enjoys how perfectly their scents blend together. Raina pulls the blankets tighter around herself, but it does nothing to block out the memory of Aiden's fingers brushing her chin, his skin against her neck. Her heart beats faster at the thought, her skin heating up again as it had last night. She hates that he has this effect on her, that his presence stirred something inside her she hadn't expected. She knows better than to invite trouble, especially with someone who wields as much power as he does. Aiden is a stranger, but more than that, he's Heath's son. She shifts under the sheets, feeling the warmth of the morning sun creeping through the curtains. She should have told him to leave, should have stood her ground, but instead she'd let him stay. She'd let him touch her, and he'd been surprised by it. She remembers his cocky exterior faltering, if only for a moment, when she didn't flinch or push him away. Was that why she'd let him do it? Because she'd seen that flicker of surprise, that little crack in his confidence, and it made her feel like she had some kind of power over him? Her lips part as she exhales slowly, her thoughts still tangled. She'd felt nothing but powerless for weeks, but this stranger's gaze had made her feel seen, like she existed again, outside of Heath's demands and Duncan's manipulations, like she was more than a pawn. Her pulse quickens again as she recalls the way he'd leaned in, his voice low and mocking, but his eyes searching. Warmth spreads through her body, pooling in her stomach, and it doesn't fade even when a maid later reveals what Aiden had done. "He sent Mark to you," the maid exclaims while helping Raina with her hair. Raina isn't sure what this means, so she lets the maid continue, her words spilling out in a rush. "The Alpha will be furious," the maid whispers, eyes wide. "His son leaving his scent all over you like this, like you are his. It isn't proper." The maid stops there, but she said enough for Raina to understand. What Aiden had done was frowned upon in shifter society, probably an attempt to provoke his father. He seemed intent on doing just that. Raina should have been furious upon realizing Aiden's intentions. Here she was, fighting for her life, her family, and somehow Aiden thought he could just use her to irritate his father. But last night, for the first time in months, she'd felt alive, like her presence mattered. She knows what it feels like to be treated as a pawn, and that wasn't how he'd looked at her when he touched her. "Stop it," she scolds herself, forcing her mind back to logic. Aiden is just like his father, manipulative, dangerous, someone who can't be trusted. He's probably playing with her, trying to figure out her weaknesses. That's all this is, a game. But that doesn't stop the flutter in her chest or the lingering heat on her skin when she thinks of him. If this is a game, then it's one she now intends to win. Aiden leans against the doorway, arms crossed, watching his father's face turn red with rage. "How dare you?" Heath's voice booms, echoing through the walls of the house. "Sent marking your sister under my roof like some animal." Aiden doesn't flinch, not even at the word sister, despite how ridiculous it sounds. He's used to this. Heath's disapproval, steady and predictable, almost comforting in its consistency. It's the one thing Aiden can rely on. His eyes flicker to Raina. "Sister," he thinks with a snort. His scent still mixes with hers, and it satisfies him deeply. Something inside of him clenches because Heath can probably smell it too. Their scents combined, his and Raina's, lingering in the air. That's all this is about, making his father angry. That's the reason why he likes it. Heath's voice cuts through his thoughts. "Look at her," he spits. "This poor child was attacked, for God's sake. Who knows what happened to her out there? She barely remembers anything." Aiden opens his mouth to retort something snide about how convenient that sounds, but then he notices Raina tremble, a slight shake in her shoulders at first, almost imperceptible. She erupts into soft, broken sobs, and the words die in his throat. Tears are for the weak. Aiden knows this, but hers make him uncomfortable. His fingers twitch, and for a second he wants to move and offer comfort. But then his father reaches Raina first. "You're safe, child," Heath mutters, his voice dropping into a tone Aiden has never heard him use before. "I've got you, my dear." Aiden gapes. For all the times his father had berated him, torn him down piece by piece. Heath had never offered comfort. And now here he is, cradling this random girl like her fragility is endearing. Besides, Aiden was the one to upset her. If anything, he should be the one to comfort Raina. Here she is, mumbling an apology through her tears, and he shifts uncomfortably. It's one thing to upset his father, who's done nothing but deserve it. Raina, though, she sounds scared. It makes him feel much worse than his father has in a while. He should have known better than to drag her into his war with Heath. The thought worms its way into his mind, uninvited and unwelcome. Aiden clenches his fists at his sides, torn between the familiar numbness that's kept him sane for so long and the unexpected wave of guilt creeping up on him. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Heath snaps, making Raina startle. "Look at what you've done." Aiden swallows hard. He opens his mouth to apologize, the words forming on the tip of his tongue. Then Raina turns slightly and catches his gaze. Through her tears, she smirks. It's small, barely there for a split second. Aiden wonders if he imagined it, but no, there it is, a flicker of something knowing in her eyes. His pulse quickens. That smirk, it's not the look of someone who's scared. It's something else entirely. It's not the look of someone who's broken. It's something else entirely. Something that stirs a strange mix of emotions in him. Anger, fascination, and something dangerously close to admiration. Heath continues yelling, but Aiden barely hears him now. His focus is entirely on Raina, on the way she's sitting there, letting his father coddle her while her eyes focus only on him. Raina leans back in the seat, eyes half closed, as she lets the soft hum of the engine relax her. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until now. The shopping trip was fine. Heath had told her to buy whatever she liked, a sad attempt to cheer her up after the scene this morning. But the real comfort came from replaying the look on Aiden's face when he'd finally understood her crying fit had been an act. A smirk tugs at her lips, and she lets it grow as she recalls the brief flicker of realization in his eyes. He hadn't expected her to turn the tables on him. She could practically see the confusion brewing behind that cocky exterior, the way he'd paused off-kilter when she met his gaze. She'd enjoyed watching him squirm. But then her smirk falters as another image creeps into her mind. The vacant look on Aiden's face before their eyes had locked. His father had been yelling at him, spewing insults like venom, and yet Aiden hadn't reacted. He wasn't unaffected, not exactly. Nor was he defeated. It was more like he just wasn't there, like he disappeared somewhere inside himself, away from his father's reach. The thought nags at her. She wonders if he's angry with her now for using Heath's protectiveness to her advantage. But then again, Aiden had started it. He'd marked her, after all. She couldn't just let that slide. Just as she's starting to convince herself of that, the door to the car swings open. Raina's heart leaps, not with fear, but something else entirely, when Aiden slides into the seat beside her. He moves with the same casual confidence, his smirk firmly in place. And despite everything, a spark of intrigue lights up in his eyes. She feels a rush of heat. Why does he always do this to her? She forces herself to remain still, though her pulse quickens when he hands her a handkerchief. "For you," Aiden says, his voice low and teasing, as if they're in on some kind of private joke. "To dry those fake tears you like to cry." Raina wants to laugh, but she keeps her face neutral. "Keep it," she says with a small, pleasant smile. "You'll be needing it more than me." Aiden lets out a low whistle. "Feeling confident, are we?" Raina shrugs, despite the quickening of her pulse. "Well, the alpha does consider me like the daughter he never had." "That doesn't say much about his affections," Aiden replies, rolling his eyes. I'm the son he's always had, and that hasn't gotten me anywhere. Your father only likes people who need his protection, Raina taunts, but he'd resent you for ever needing protection in the first place. I have the advantage here, and you know it. She's being reckless. She should have kept her head down, should have done so from the start, but she can't help herself. She can't help herself, not when, after being numb for so long, knowing only fear, her blood feels like it's thrumming again. And not when Aiden, instead of being angry, chuckles, leaning back in the seat with a relaxed ease that unnerves her. Is that what you want? He asks. To be a part of my family? Should I call you sis? She feels that same strange pull, like she's alive again, like she exists beyond this twisted game they're playing. My father gets easily bored, Aiden adds, catching a lock of Raina's hair between his fingers. He'll be done with you soon enough. Raina's pulse quickens as he looks at her like that again, like he can see her, and like he likes it. Then why are you here? She counters softly, her eyes flicking to his for the briefest moment. Aiden raises an eyebrow, clearly unmused by her response, but there's something more beneath that smirk now. Maybe I'm bored too, he suggests, angling his face toward hers. You're only bored if you're boring, Raina replies, her breath mingling with Aiden's. His eyes fall onto her lips, and he inclines his head further toward hers, her heartbeat racing in her chest. Raina smirks and raises the back of her hand so his mouth kisses it instead. Back off, brother. She bats her eyelashes, pushing against his lips. We wouldn't want to displease father now, would we? Aiden snorts. He isn't your father, he says, and he'll remember it soon enough. Raina bends toward him, holding his gaze, and opens the car door behind him. We'll see, she concludes. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you'd like a part 2 by liking or commenting on the video. In the meantime, if you enjoyed it, you'll find links to more stories like this one on your screen.